Chapter 279. I am the one who becomes the sect leader of Mount Hua. 4. Finally, Wei Soheng clenched his fists as he watched the many people waiting before him. I am the one who becomes the sect leader of Mount Hua. We have finally arrived. Right. Finally. It was such a long journey. Wei Lishan, who heard his son's words, took a deep breath. Our sect leader didn't know. If he were participating in the Wordly Murum competition, they would have sent a letter asking for our participation. We could have left and arrived much earlier with that. Since the sect leader was busy preparing for the competition though. Isn't that normal? Yes. You were right. Wei Lishan nodded his head. The Worldly Murum competition. His heart trembled. Although it was called such, the competition was actually much closer to the heavenly famous cultural competition. Only those who are recognized as strong in Kango and had proved their position in the world would have received their invitation to Shaolin and participate. In other words, being able to participate in this tournament itself meant that the sect was proven to be strong. And for a day to come when Mount Hua will be called to such a place. Wei Lishan's heart kept trembling because of this, and he kept looking at the different people. How much sorrow had he gone through to protect and make the Huayang Gate work? How many people ridiculed him for choosing to follow Mount Hua with them being called the fallen and ruined sect? No. This was good. A time when its existence would be known. Is there such a place? When he thought of the time he had to smile at those who asked, his eyes turned cold. I think the main sect people will go to the top. Soheng. Ah. Father. It is good to have high expectations, but you shouldn't wish for too much, said Wei Lishan seriously. It is amazing enough to be able to participate here where many prestigious sects compete with their skills. Of course, one day Mount Hua will come out on top of the world, but right now there is still a gap between them and those who have ruled the world for far too long. Yes. So no matter what results come, don't get too disappointed. We will be supporting them with all our hearts. I will keep that in mind. Wei Lishan smiled as he watched his son say that with clenched fists. Wasn't it said that 1,000 miles start with a single step? Mount Hua was still developing at a rapid rate. Higher expectations would only put a burden on them. We cannot keep leaning on the main sect. Our Huayang will have to be able to help Mount Hua regain its glory. Wei Lishan opened his mouth with determination. Let us all go. Yes. His disciple, Yap Pyong, followed behind Wei Lishan. Aren't we supposed to greet the elders of the main sect? It is fine. They must all be busy right now. They must all be busy right now. They won't even say anything if we greet them once today's spars are finished. I understand. They arrived at the edge of the crowds, but they were so far from the stage that it couldn't be seen well. In particular, the disciples were rather short, so it was difficult for spectators to watch. Let's head in a little bit more. Yes. Disciples of Huayang Gate broke into the crowd and fierce protests broke out. Ugh. Don't push. These people. How dare you do this after coming late? We are sorry, we just want to head inside a little. Wei Lishan bowed with an awkward expression. A man with a grim face blocked the front. No. Aren't you a martial arts sect? Don't you see all the people who came in early for this view? Huh. And you want us to make space for you? I apologize. Apology? Go and die somewhere. They'll tear off your hands. The atmosphere turned sore. Everyone here was well trained, and the cold aura exuding from their bodies made him tremble, so Wei Lishan coughed and said, We arrived so late despite running from our home, and I made a mistake since the children were looking forward to this. I apologize. Ads by Pub Future. Who doesn't do that? Which sect are you from? We are Huayang Gate in Nanyang. A martial arts training gate under Mount Hua. Huayang Gate. I never heard of. The man with the grim face who was speaking went silent. And then looked at Wei Lishan with strange eyes. Your sect? It is Huayang Gate. No. Not that, sir. You belong to Mount Hua. Mount Hua? Yes. The Mount Hua bandits are, no. Are you talking about Mount Hua, which is participating here? Ah. What is with his reaction? And Mount Hua bandits? Wei Lishan looked at the man with confused eyes and nodded. Yes, that is true. The person who was blocking his path turned around and coughed. Ah, you were from Mount Hua. Mount Hua. Ah. Wei Lishan frowned at this strange reaction. What is this? This man had been growling like a dog, but was now shaking his shoulders and coughing with a weird expression. I didn't know that Mount Hua had other minor sects. Ah, this way please, I will guide you. Ah. The man looked and shouted. These are disciples of Mount Hua. Pave the way. Mount Hua. Young disciples of Mount Hua. Man, such terrifying words. Ah. Terrifying. Wei Lishan tilted his head. Everyone around had similar reactions. Even those who met his eyes would immediately turn their heads away. It was like, doesn't this look like how we acted when we came across street thugs in our neighborhood? So why were they looking at Huayong Gate like that? Just why? Hurry up now. Open the way. Get out of the way. Mount Hua's people, make way. Move to the side. Mount Hua. Wei Lishan was shocked at this absurd thing he was witnessing as the path opened. Just what had happened for this to be their reaction? This way please. Go ahead, and this is the side of Mount Hua. Ha ha. From Mount Hua. Then stand straight with confidence. Right, right. Ha ha ha. Wei Lishan couldn't figure out why they were saying this. Just what has happened here? But he didn't have the time to find out. It was because before he could speak, he heard a loud call. Next. Mount Hua's Changyang. Changyang. Mount Hua and Changyang. When Wei Lishan heard the familiar combination of those two words which didn't go well together, he turned to the stage. But the roaring crowd obscured his vision in an instant. Whoa! Mount Hua's Divine Dragon. Mount Hua is up. Mount Hua's Divine Dragon is up there. Ads by Pub Future. As soon as the name Changyang came, they all began to cheer for him from all sides. What? Mount Hua's Divine Dragon. Disciple Changyang. The reaction was so huge that Wei Lishan was stunned for a moment and he looked around. Even Wei Soheng seemed a bit taken aback, but he lifted his head to look at the stage. He could see someone in black climbing up. It is disciple Changyang. Of course, it wasn't easy to recognize people by looking at their backs. But this back was saying, ugh, I am so bored but these people keep calling for me. Is there anyone here who would express such things if not for Changyang? It is a win for Mount Hua's Divine Dragon. In one hit. It will be done in one hit this time too. Their ears were already hurting from all the cheers. On one stage there was Changyang who had just gone up, and on the other side, there was a spa that had been happening since they had arrived here. And the moment Changyang came up, the mood changed for all. All of the disciples of Huayang looked around with wide eyes, shocked open. Ah, in the future. They didn't know what was happening, but they had to grow up or bring something to stand on. Wasn't this a spar with Changyang, who was said to be the most likely to become the best warrior? If they could not see this man's performance, then there was no use coming here. Changyang's appearance made the crowd stand up with heated cheers, making Wei Lishan, the taller disciple, lift up the shorter ones. Wei Soheng, standing up, admired Changyang. Disciple Changyang. He thought Changyang would be strong, but he didn't think so many cheers would come for him. Even Wei Soheng, who would admit to not having any deep connection with Changyang, felt his heart fill up with pride. I believe in you. He looked at Changyang as if possessed. And Wei Lishan, who didn't notice that his son was being stained by a ghost, smiled brightly. Ha 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 ha. Mount Hua is a sect which is so well received. He felt tears stinging his eyes. But strangely, the cheers began to change. Break their heads. So what if they are the 9 great sects? Break them and throw them away. At the cheers, Wei Lishan laughed awkwardly. Is this fine? Well, it would work out. Changyang looked at the cheers and mumbled. No. I did nothing yet. Whoa. It is Mount Hua's Divine Dragon. Show us something good this time too, Mount Hua's Divine Dragon. Win. Win. Mount Hua will win. Chang Myung's lips trembled a little, into a slight smile. It does feel good to be praised, he. Chang Myung scratched his head with a smile. In order to make a strong impression, one needed to show a blunt side, but if one kept getting compliments, one might turn sloppy. It is because I grew up without receiving any compliments. You need to do something that deserves praise first. You stupid bastard. Kuak. Chang Myung had lost his mood. When he was the Plum Blossom Sword Saint, there were hardly any such competitions held. To be precise, there were no consistent ones held, and no competition ever made sure that his full extent was shown. And when his young period had ended, no competitions were held at all, so he had grown up without any. No, those bastards. Now that I think about it, they were avoiding me on purpose. Well, unlike now, at that time, Chang Myung's skills were widely known, and everyone would avoid sparring with him. TCH. Pathetic. Looking for more content? We may have what you want. Looking for more content? We may have what you want. Discovery feed. Ads by PubFuture. Not for your skills but for your notorious name, you idiot. If you cannot say it to my face, then don't say it. My heart. Shut it. Chang Myung lowered his head with a smile. Well, he would love to see that man once more. If Chang rose to the top, maybe the clouds would be pushed out of the way for that man to see how this competition went. So, I need to give good results. Chang Myung took a deep breath. Thinking about it, it felt sad. At an age when young people could be seen joking around and applauding others, he was in the midst of them. Normally he should be where the sect leaders were sitting right now. No, if he was in his actual body and had lived this long, he would be kneeling on the ground. No, if he was in his actual body and had lived this long, he would be kneeling on the ground and making the others wash his shoes. But again, he was in a situation where they were smiling down at him. This was why life was called unknowable. TCH. Chang Myung shook his head and looked at his opponent. Jin Song was it? A disciple of Wudang. A disciple of the Wudang sect who was known to be skilled. Among them, this child was known to be one of the top 20 candidates for the strongest disciple of this competition. So what to do against him? Be fair. Why is he? Chang Myung narrowed his eyes. Jin Song, who was against him, was shivering in a cold sweat. Tilting at the strangeness surrounding him, he asked. You. EIKKKKK. Chang Myung's face darkened and the guy began to step back with more sweat. N-O-V-E-L-B-I-N.C, Are you hurt? No. Why are you talking like that? You seem sick. No. I am really fine. Of course, Jin Song wasn't fine. Well, he was the opponent of Chang Myung. How can I defeat that monster? That monster who beat my Mu Jin Sasuk. And who was Mu Jin Sasuk? Elder Hyo-san also said that for a short time that monster had played with him. Mu Jin Sasuk was called the best among the first-class disciples and was on a path to becoming an elder. If Jin Song had competed with Mu Jin, he would have had his legs broken within 3 seconds, so how could he deal with this monster who had defeated Mu Jin? Exclamation mark. If there weren't many eyes on him, he would have just vanished. That monster. Seeing Jin Song act so terrified, Chang Myung smiled. Are you really fine? You look sick. It is fine. It is fine. People get nervous. Right. Yes. Yes. It is true. Chang Myung smiled looking at Jin Song. This guy looked cute to him. You seem to have eyes that can show you the truth in people. Why don't we just back out? No, I will try. Really? Yes. For sure. Yes. Chang Myung licked his lips and pulled his sword out. Well, we need to bring our swords out to know the other person, right? I will praise your spirit for coming against me despite knowing that you cannot compete, but from my point of view, I need to move to end this right. Do you really want to go through with this? That. Come on. I will deal with you with sincerity for this, so let's have a proper fight. Chang Myung's smile was reflected in the twitching eyes of Jin Song. Let's just surrender. I need to make sure survival is the priority. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 280. I am the one who will become the sect leader of Mount Hua. 5. Sir. Jin Song, who wanted to voice his surrender, glanced back. On the podium where the sect leaders were seated, Hyoda Jinan, the sect leader of the Wudang sect, was looking at him with cold eyes. Kuik. He knew he wouldn't win. However, as a disciple of Wudang, he couldn't just surrender in front of so many people. Of course, he might consider it wise, but the people watching wouldn't. In the end, Jin Song closed his eyes and aimed his sword at Chung Myung. I'll learn a few things. Learn? Yes. You are a funny one. Ah. Chung Myung rolled his eyes. If you want to learn, go to your teachers. Who would say that they would learn from their opponent, someone who is from another sect? And no. It isn't like that. Fine, I will tell you. Chung Myung licked his lips. Instead. Learning comes with a price. If you can survive today's spa, it will be an amazing experience. That is if you can. Jin Song smiled brightly, looking at Chung Myung's shining eyes. No, how did such a man appear on the side of the orthodox? Even the heavens were ignoring this. How could they give such power to this person? With tears, Jin Song grabbed his sword. Huck. After taking a deep breath, he aimed his sword at Chung Myung with determined eyes. Do you want to try and end it? I know I am not your opponent. But. Jin Song continued to speak while trembling. I cannot only fight with opponents who I have a chance of winning against. Since I won't die, I will do my best to fight. Chung Myung smiled. So funny. Sometimes such people would come. It was the same in the past war with the demonic sect. Those who would argue with their mouths and would insist that they wouldn't back down. They weren't ones with amazing skills, but they still went to war with their loud mouths. But even though they were terrified and trembling, not once did they back down, and they did whatever they could do. Wudang is Wudang. There were people like this. Chung Myung smiled. Hey. What did you say your name was? Jin Song. Jin Song. Right, Jin Song. I will remember it. Chung Myung slightly tilted his sword. Then let's get started. Ache. Chung Myung rushed towards Jin Song without delay, and the guy's eyes widened like a burning candle. Ache. He screamed with his mouth, but the sword in his hand followed the technique of Wudang without shaking. A sharp and clean sword technique. Your legs. Swish. Ugh. However, the sword of Chung Myung passed through the sword technique of Jin Song and struck Jin Song in the knee. Ads by Pub Future. Jin Song reflexively used his sword to aim for Chung Myung's neck. Waist. Tack. Jin Song, who was hit in the side, clenched his teeth. If it had been a real battle, his leg would have been cut off from the side. But this was just a spar. And the fight would happen until the opponent fell. Jin Song let out a loud shout and shook his sword. A brilliant sword technique of Wudang, called clear flowing water, began to unfold gracefully. Shoulder. Wrist. Index finger. Tack. 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 The sword of Chung Myung kept hitting him in succession. Ack. The sword technique he tried to unfold was stopped, and the sword flew into the air. Jin Song looked at Chung Myung with puzzled eyes. How did this? The head DD. Bark. Thud. Chung Myung brought his sword, still within its sheath, to his opponent's head before pulling it back. When it comes to swordsmanship, everything starts with the lower body and shoulders. Wudang or not, the head should realize this. Learn it. It was unclear if Jin Song, who had already fallen down, could hear this, but not caring, Chung Myung turned around. Explosive applause poured in for him, and Chung Myung smiled as he waved. The best. Mount Hua's Divine Dragon. One hit this time too. You ha. How can a disciple of Wudang be knocked down in one hit? Exclamation mark. He hadn't even pulled his sword from its sheath. The winner was already decided. At the pouring cheers, Chung Myung's face twitched. Kuak. This is quite tasty. This was why people sought fame. Chung Myung, who felt it, waved his hand once again. And behind Chung Myung, Jin Song jumped up. Ah! And without realizing, he kept touching his opponent's head. Isn't he hurt? He definitely heard the sound of something breaking, but he could feel nothing on his opponent's head. Jin Song looked at Chung Myung with eyes that looked shocked. Disciple Chung Myung, Mount Hua's divine dragon, and the starter of Mount Hua. Except for that, there weren't many good things that could be said about him. Yet strangely, Mu Jin and Hyo Sanjo, who had clashed with him, had never spoken badly about Chung Myung. No wonder. Jin Song seemed to know the reason. This spar ends with the victory of Mount Hua's Chung Myung. November, L. B. J. N. N. And with that declaration, Chung Myung left the stage. Ah! Disciple Chung Myung. Wei Soheng shouted at the top of his voice. Of course, his voice was drowned out by the cheers of the crowds, but he still did it. Disciple Chung Myung. Ha ha ha. It is Disciple Chung Myung. It was at that moment. Chung Myung, who was getting down, suddenly turned to the audience. Ah! And his eyes met with Wei Soheng. No, he can't hear me from here. Even if he could hear, locating where the voice came from was. But then Chung Myung waved his hand with a happy face. Did he see me? And he jumped down the stage and went into the crowd. Surprised, the crowd cheered and reached for Chung Myung. Chung Myung would lightly shake hands and walk until the Hwayoung party was reached. Oh my, gate leader. When did you get here? When Chung Myung shouted warmly, Wei Lishan smiled. Ads by Pub Future. We are so welcomed here. Looking at Chung Myung with a smile on his face, he felt genuinely happy. Wei Lishan wasn't stupid. Just by looking at the cheers pouring in, it was impossible to not see how different the status of Mount Hua was from the past. Still, didn't Chung Myung greet him with the same face as before? He is someone who is nothing like a Taoist but in some ways, he was exactly like one too. When I heard that Mount Hua was participating, I ran over with my disciples. Thank you. Chung Myung grabbed Wei Lishan's hand. It couldn't have been easy to get here. Ha ha. Seeing disciple Chung Myung win, it seems like all the hardships have been blown away. He. Right. With a bashful smile, Chung Myung glanced into Wei Lishan's eyes. But maybe. Chung Myung licked his lips, and Wei Lishan glanced around and whispered softly. 10 bottles. Quick. As if moved, Chung Myung dragged with his hands. Over there. There is a place for those who come from Mount Hua. Ha ha. We are part of the. It is fine. Fine. There are many seats left. Ah, no. That is the rule. The rules. Throw him out. We are going to use our place. How is that their problem? Don't worry, because if people come to argue, I will turn their hairy hides into shiny ones. Wei Lishan shook his head. He really hasn't changed. When a person gains fame and status, they change, and they tend to be careful about their words and actions. However, Chung Myung, despite acquiring such a reputation, hadn't changed at all. No, in some ways, he was turning worse rather than better. This isn't necessarily a good thing. It couldn't be denied that he was a terrific person. At that time, Wei Soheng said, Disciple Chung Myung. Chung Myung looked at him and grinned. Did you see me? Yes. So strong. Wei Soheng admired him with longing eyes, and Chung Myung just shrugged. It isn't that I am strong, but they are weak. Really? No. Maybe I am strong. Chung Myung smiled and dragged the two. Come on this way. Ah. Chung Myung held the two and swept them through the crowd, and headed to the side. All the disciples followed them. Elder! Elder! Chung Myung began to shout as he crossed out of the crowded place. The gate leader from Hwayoung Gate arrived. Hwayoung Gate. Oh. As soon as Bak Chon and the others who knew the gate heard it, they jumped up. Gate leader. It is so nice to see you after this long. How have you been? Wei Lishan, who was about to respond with a soft smile, flinched and stepped back without realizing it. What? Didn't he say this was where Mount Hua was? Seems right. The black robe and plum blossom on their chests showed they were disciples of Mount Hua. No, but Mount Hua. Looking for more content? We may have what you want. Looking for more content? We may have what you want. Discovery feed. Ads by Pub Future. It didn't seem like it. But there was Yoon Jong, Jo Gul, and Bak Chon. They looked slightly more mature from before, but they hadn't changed from what he knew. However, the others around them looked unusual. So Heng. Ah. When you went to Mount Hua, was it like this? No. No. It wasn't like this at all. It had been less than a year since Wei Soheng visited Mount Hua. So what had happened in less than a year that turned them into this? Elder. Ah. We have guests. Guest. What kind of guests can Mount Hua have? A big bandit? No, a man walked in front of them. It is just a man with a goatee that looked like he could come from any bandit group. It was quite wrong to criticize an elder of the main sect like this, but he fit so well into that situation. An elder? Were any Mount Hua elders this young? Who? Gate leader of Huayang. Huayang Gate. At that moment, the man's face, which seemed stiff, turned benevolent like he had a halo behind his head. What? The elder, Hyun Young, ran forward and grabbed his hand. Huayang Gate leader. Ah. I am Wei Lishan, the gate leader of Huayang. Right. You're already this well grown. I am Hyun Young. Elder Hyun Young. Yes. Hyun Young, who was about to stroke the head of Wei Lishan, looked around and tapped his shoulders. Welcome. I forgot that we should have stopped by Huayang once on our way, we were a bit rushed. Hyun Young kept rubbing his shoulders with a smile. One gesture and one smile, all filled with joy. But are you really Elder Hyun Young? Right. Didn't you see me when you visited Mount Hua when you were young? You seem too young. Ha. A good thing happened. Right, along. Hyun Young, who was about to say something, turned back and said, "What are you all doing?" Exclamation mark. You idiots. If we have guests, should NTU bring chairs for them? What are you? People who don't have manners. Ah, no. People from our sect came, and you're not giving him the seat. Get up right now. Exclamation mark. Wei Lishan's eyes widened. Isn't that too harsh? However, the reaction of the disciples was a bit too weird. Chair. Hurry up. Move, you people. They picked up chairs from elsewhere or gave the chairs they were sitting on, and ran wide-eyed to place the chairs in front of the new arrivals. Sit comfortably. We can stand and watch. Please don't mind. Wei Lishan was too flustered, and Hyun Young nodded as if this was natural. Ah. That's that. Chung Young. You are fine. You should put another chair ahead and lie down. I was going to do that. Right, you bastard. This was a bit weird too. Hyun Young smiled and suggested a seat to Wei Lishan. Sect leader is currently somewhere else, so we will probably meet in the evening. Ah. I will. Elder, I don't know what to do with such hospitality. At that moment, Hyun Young grabbed his hand again. Huayang Gate leader. Ah. Mount Hua is well aware of how much you have given us. So please do not feel uncomfortable and stay in peace. Elder. Wei Lishan's eyes flashed with emotions. Seeing the tightly held hand, his emotions flooded in. At that time, Hyun Young opened his mouth with a bit of a puzzled face. But, ah. And he said a bit shakily. I couldn't confirm as I came here before it. No. Did you send the money to Mount Hua? I sent it before I started coming here. Yes. Please rest in peace. In peace. Ha. It was Wei Lishan who thought that Mount Hua had something terribly wrong happening within it. Chapter 281, Life is Inherently Unfair, 1. The head DDDD. The momentum of Mount Hua didn't stop. Of course, the opponent being blown away with a single hit during the start was quite rare now. Basically, every other disciple was wary of the disciples from Mount Hua, and all because only the strong managed to stay on for so long. However, the disciples of Mount Hua hadn't allowed a single loss until the final day of the preliminary rounds, and they were sweeping away their opponents with great force. It was exhilarating. It felt as if the feelings accumulated in the heart were being ripped free. Wei Lishan, who had been looking at this scene with a pleasant smile, licked his lips with an expression that said something was wrong. It is good. Everything seemed good. Why? You call that a sword? You need to come to Mount Hua and climb the cliff there. How dare you stick your head in front of me? Waist. 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 Ankle. Can you avoid this? You avoided it. Let's try again then. Just why? Did everyone turn into this? How did they get to this level? Wei Lishan reminded himself of the former Mount Hua. Although the previously known Mount Hua had collapsed like a ruined clan and the swordsmen of Mount Hua were known to live with peaceful teachings, how much did he yearn for that same clear and sunny look? It wasn't simply to support his predecessors' teachings, but because the appearance of the Mount Hua he saw as a child was so impressive. But now, good job. The head. The head. Like a child, no, not a kid, an infant was the right word. Anyway, watching Wei Soheng look at this version of Mount Hua, I am not sure what to call this feeling. He had concerns, but his chest was filled up. He wondered if this was real or a dream to see the disciples of Mount Hua pushing back the other sects he had feared so much. When did Mount Hua become this strong? Of course, Wei Lishan had seen the strength of Cheng Yang and their friends with his own eyes. But this was a separate matter. Regardless of their status, there were often people called geniuses among the disciples of a sect. Such people raise the status of their sect and create the foundation for the elevation of their sect to a prestigious one. In other words, it means that someone like Cheng Yang or Bak Chon could appear anywhere without effort or process. It was certainly a good thing, but that alone doesn't prove the power or the abilities of a sect. But why is everyone so good? Not losing. At a spa. Wei Lishan rolled his eyes. This was no small fight with the local sect's disciples or a fight over alcohol. This was a formal sparring competition where the best, or those who aimed to be the best, were recognized by the world. But no matter how good one was in the preliminary rounds, wasn't losing one match normal. Wei Lishan blinked. There was something else he couldn't understand. It was said that only the disciples of Huayang Gate were excited about this. Mount Hua's disciples were blankly looking at the results, or many were more interested in the spars of the others. Tak. Yun Zhong, who slapped the opponent on the back of the neck, looked at their collapsing opponent. Not bad, but it will take a little more effort. Of course, it won't be easy to work as hard as the Mount Hua disciples. Yun Zhong came down the stage to cheers. Really so cool. Wei Soheng was wide-eyed. This was a sight he had hoped for. This was how the disciples of Mount Hua took down the famous names he knew. However, to actually see it was something to be happy about, but equally dazzling at the same time. Should he say it didn't feel real? How can everyone be strong? Cheng Yang and his companions were all normally strong. But he didn't think the other disciples of Mount Hua could be this strong. And this person won too. Wei Soheng looked at Tang Soso, who was next to him. He heard it hadn't been long since she had entered Mount Hua, but here she was. And this gave Wei Soheng hope. Then, me too. He stared at Tang Soso intently. Then, she, who was eating her jerky, turned her head to him. What? Nothing it isn't. Wei Soheng hesitated and waved his hands. And she pulled out a jerky from the basket and pushed it to Wei Soheng. Don't look for my jerky, I will blow your hands off. At that time, Yu Yasale returned from her spa, and Tang Soso jumped from her seat and grabbed a towel and a water bottle she had prepared beforehand. Seigo. Seigo. Here. Thank you. Hee, it was nothing. Wei Soheng smiled brightly at Tang Soso, who looked like an entirely different person from a second back. Ah, she is a person from Mount Hua. Anyone could see she was from Mount Hua, anyone. At that time, Chung Myung, who was seated, got up and stretched his body as he yawned. Ah, I am bored. How long do I have left? Now there is just one left. Who? Bak Sang. Chung Myung nodded his head. If it's Baek Sang, he will win easily. Right. Among the Bak disciples, he is one of the strongest. Bak Chon, Yu Yisel, Yoon Jong, and Jo Gul walked on a completely different path, even within Mount Hua. With the exception of these 5, including Chung Myung, Bak Sang could be called the best among the second-class disciples. He couldn't imagine Bak Sang losing while the others couldn't manage to lose. Tell him to finish it quickly. What kind of spar is this boring? The lips of Bak Chon trembled a little. Aside from the fact that the disciples from famous sect spars were boring to him, it was clear that something was missing from this idiot's head. It will be done soon. If that spar is finished, then it's Bak Sang's turn. That spar? Chung Myung's gaze turned to where Bak Chon pointed. Seeing a man with a great sword walking off, Chung Myung laughed. What is the Namgung doing? Right, single-edged sword. Bak Chon said softly. Chung Myung, feeling the intention to fight, looked at single-edged sword. He is strong. In the world, there had to be strong ones. With their talents and origins, these giants aimed for the first position under the heavens. And this guy, the single-edged sword of Namgung, was one such person. Perhaps, without Chung Myung, that name would be the one existing in the mouths of people. What do you think? About what? Can he win? Bak Chon asked with a smile. Of course, we need to fight to know, but... Nothing. Chung Myung tilted his head. What was this? We cannot afford to lose, you damned bastard. Oh. My Dong Ryong is. Bak Chon drew his sword. No. Bak Chon Sasuk is full of confidence. Chung Myung used words and smiled. But Sasuk, I have a question for you. Can I ask? Bak Chon looked at Chung Myung. After all this time, he was anxious when Chung Myung would speak out honestly. What? Sasuk Jin Dong Ryong, right? It is Bak Chon. Sasuk's Hyung is Jin Jiam Ryong. So? Chung Myung smiled and asked. Then there has to be a Yoon Ryong one too. Right. My second Hyung. Really? He probably wasn't chosen as a representative as his martial arts haven't always been strong. Oh. And Yoon Ryong too. Chung Myung looked at the Southern Edge sect. I don't know what kind of person Sasuk's father is, but I do know one thing for sure. His naming ability can be compared to that of an Asura from hell. Empathize with that. Dong Ryong no, Bak Chon closed his eyes. Anyway, don't be careless. That bastard is strong. Chung Myung had a bit of a serious look now and said, looking at Dan Ak Jiam. Geniuses do crazy things once in a while. Common sense gets ignored when becoming stronger, such as training and understanding the sword or gaining experience. All to get the most incomprehensible achievements. Is that one such a genius? Probably. Bak Chon looked at the single-edged sword. Namgung Du Wei. This was the first time he had heard Chung Myung evaluate someone this generously. Wasn't Chung Myung someone who treated Jin Jiam Ryong, who made a mess of Bak Chon, like a worm in his eyes? N-O-V-E-L-B-I-N-C Om. But this one was a genius. I am turning hot. Bak Chion's eyes went cold. I will break you. Bak Chon was creating a resolute will. Chung Myung pushed his face. Conscious still. How can I be unconscious now? We have Jiam Ryong to deal with. Why be this aware of the Namgung? Hyung isn't a much of a huge problem. This was an insignificant conversation, and Chung Myung smiled. Oh ho. Our Bak Chon Sasuk is now learning to speak arrogantly too. Jin Jiam Ryong is nothing. Did I say that? Bak Chon scratched his head with an awkward smile. No. I didn't mean it like. Sasuk. Don't be cocky. Bak Chon flinched at Chung Myung's cold words. It is normal for frogs to forget the time when they were tadpoles. The strong don't remember the weak, so they don't care about those weaker than them. But among such frogs, the only ones that can turn into pumpkin toadlets are the ones who remember their time as tadpoles. Chung Myung, who said that, shrugged his shoulders and relaxed his face. I know it feels good to be strong. But if we forget to look at our feet today, one day, someone will climb up to grab our ankles. And then you lose your foundation. Bak Chon bit his lip. Now the force was lifted, but every time Chung Myung would show such a side, he could feel a tightening feeling in his chest. Because I don't know if I really know him. This wasn't simply a force that came from strength. Should this be called the dignity that comes from being a man? I will be mindful. Right. Then Dong Ryong. Ah. Why pull your sword out again? Bak Chon smiled and took his hand off his sword as he asked. So you are a frog that looks down. Are you saying that you are a golden one? Ah. Hey, what are you saying? I am not. Ah. Bak Chon tilted his head at this unfamiliar humility. No. Chung Myung pointed at himself and held his stomach out. I must be a dragon or a phoenix. A dragon child is still a dragon. Sasuk is the frog. Didn't you get it? This brat. Bak Chon was ready to strangle Chung Myung. Quack. There was a huge explosion, and dust rose from one of the spars. Dust began to settle after a while, and Namgung's Du-Wei could be seen standing proudly. Personalized content tailored to your preferences, all in one place. Personalized content tailored to your preferences, all in one place. Discovery feed. Ads by PubFuture. The winner is the Namgung family's Du-Wei. The man, who had an expressionless face, looked as if this victory had come easy. Look at that. Yes. So similar to someone I know. Me. I said nothing, but here you give yourself away. Kuak. Bak Chon couldn't say anything and groaned. He couldn't deny it. If in the past Bak Chon had won, he would try to keep a still face just like this man. That man will learn it all if his head is broken. Ah. Are you sure? A human needs to be confident. Bak Chon clenched his hands. His ultimate goal was to defeat Chung Myung. So he couldn't get caught in such a place. A good answer. But it isn't just that, man. There were some really good ones standing out. Is that so? Chung Myung nodded his head. Perhaps the finals will depend on how we handle them. It is good to have as many left as possible. Chung Myung scratched his cheek. But the Shallan ones won't make it like that. At least, they will mess with it. Mess. Shallan manipulation. How can you be this naive? Will they feed all the kids for free? A human needs to be confident. Bak Chon clenched his hands. His ultimate goal was to defeat Chung Myung, so he couldn't get caught in such a place. A good answer. But it isn't just that, man. There were some really good ones standing out. Is that so? Chung Myung nodded his head. Perhaps the finals will depend on how we handle them. It is good to have as many left as possible. Chung Myung scratched his cheek. But the Shallan ones won't make it like that. At least, they will mess with it. Mess? Shallan manipulation. How can you be this naive? Will they feed all the kids for free and shelter them? It is only done if there is something to gain. Bak Chon frowned at this. True, but one would expect that from the Shallan. And that hope was being shattered by Chung Myung now. Well, let's just get the preliminary round done and think about it. Bak Sang Sasuk is the last. Right. He should be up. Bak Chon and Chung Myung looked at the stage. Bak Sang was waiting, facing the Shallan monk in a yellow robe. Is it done? Bak Sang drew his sword. Everyone won, so I cannot lose. Beat this one and finish the preliminary round with a win. This was just the beginning, but he wanted the win. This result will be remembered as the greatest achievement for Mount Hua in recent times. To finish the painting of the dragon by drawing out the most important part, the eyes. Bak Sang faced his opponent with the feeling that he should be the one painting the eyes. He doesn't look that strong. A slightly slender body and a youthful face. It gave the impression that the person was here to gain skills. But he is a Shallan monk. Bak Sang knew it well. He knew that there weren't just one or two men who looked weak but showed hell. Doesn't Chung Myung do that? Had he faced Chung Myung as an enemy, he would never have gotten a strong impression. And then he would get his head broken. Don't be careless and do your best. Start. As soon as the word fell, Bak Sang began to unfold the sword technique called the movement of Plum Blossom Resolve. Here I come. First, notice the reaction of the opponent, and then immediately go for the 24 movement Plum Blossom sword. Ah! At that moment, Bak Sang saw it. It was the sight of the opponent's fist moving towards him in golden light. Ah! And that was the last thing he remembered. Bang! With a short yet huge roar, the golden fist leapt out of the fist and touched Bak Sang. ACKKK. Bak Sang let out a groan and flew out. What? That is insane. The spectators were shocked, and so were the disciples of Mount Hua. Even Chung Myung stood up in shock. 100 steps divine fist. What the hell is he? The eyes of Chung Myung looking at this novice monk were shining bright. PRN. I can't remember if it was explained before, but the names are a type of metal. I can assume that you all know why these metals were used, plus dragon, so essentially. 1. Gold dragon equals Jiam Ryong. 2. Silver dragon equals Yoon Ryong. 3. Bronze dragon equals Dong Ryong. Their father clearly had a killer naming sense, am I right? The winner is the Namgung family's Du Wei. The man, who had an expressionless face, looked as if this victory had come easy. Look at that. Yes. So similar to someone I know. Me. I said nothing, but here you give yourself away. Kuak. Bak Chan couldn't say anything and groaned. He couldn't deny it. If in the past Bak Chan had won, he would try to keep a still face just like this man. That man will learn it all if his head is broken. Ah. Are you sure? A human needs to be confident. Bak Chan clenched his hands. His ultimate goal was to defeat Chung Myung. So he couldn't get caught in such a place. A good answer. But it isn't just that, man. There were some really good ones standing out. Is that so? Chung Myung nodded his head. Perhaps the finals will depend on how we handle them. It is good to have as many left as possible. Chung Myung scratched his cheek. But the Shallan ones won't make it like that. At least, they will mess with it. Mess. Shallan manipulation. How can you be this naive? Will they feed all the kids for free and shelter them? It is But the Shallan ones won't make it like that. At least, they will mess with it. Mess. Shallan manipulation. How can you be this naive? Will they feed all the kids for free and shelter them? It is only done if there is something to gain. Bak Chan frowned at this. True, but one would expect that from the Shallan. And that hope was being shattered by Chung Myung now. Well, let's just get the preliminary round done and think about it. Bak Sang Sasuk is the last. Right. He should be up. Bak Chan and Chung Myung looked to the stage. Bak Sang was waiting, facing the Shallan monk in a yellow robe. Is it done? Bak Sang drew his sword. Everyone won, so I cannot lose. Beat this one and finish the preliminary round with a win. This was just the beginning, but he wanted the win. This result will be remembered as the greatest achievement for Mount Hua in recent times. To finish the painting of the dragon by drawing out the most important part, the eyes. Bak Sang faced his opponent with the feeling that he should be the one painting the eyes. He doesn't look that strong. A slightly slender body and a youthful face. It gave the impression that the person was here to gain skills. But he is a Shallan monk. Bak Sang knew it well. He knew that there weren't just one or two men who looked weak but showed hell. Doesn't Chung Myung do that? Had he faced Chung Myung as an enemy, he would never have gotten a strong impression. And then he would get his head broken. Don't be careless and do your best. Start. As soon as the word fell, Bak Sang began to unfold the sword technique called the movement of plum. Bak Chan and Chung Myung looked at the stage. Bak Sang was waiting, facing the Shaolin monk in a yellow robe. Is it done? Bak Sang drew his sword. Everyone won, so I cannot lose. Beat this one and finish the preliminary round with a win. This was just the beginning, but he wanted the win. This result will be remembered as the greatest achievement for Mount Hua in recent times. To finish the painting of the dragon by drawing out the most important part, the eyes. Bak Sang faced his opponent with the feeling that he should be the one painting the eyes. He doesn't look that strong. A slightly slender body and a youthful face. It gave the impression that the person was here to gain skills. But he is a Shaolin monk. Bak Sang knew it well. He knew that there weren't just one or two men who looked weak but showed hell. Doesn't Chung Myung do that? Had he faced Chung Myung as an enemy, he would never have gotten a strong impression. And then he would get his head broken. Don't be careless and do your best. Start. As soon as the word fell, Bak Sang began to unfold the sword technique called the movement of Plum Blossom Resolve. Here I come. First, notice the reaction of the opponent, and then immediately go for the 24 movement Plum Blossom sword. Ah! At that moment, Bak Sang saw it. It was the sight of the opponent's fist moving towards him in golden light. Ah! And that was the last thing he remembered. Bang! With a short yet huge roar, the golden fist leapt out of the fist and touched Bak Sang. ACKKK. Bak Sang let out a groan and flew out. What? That is insane. The spectators were shocked, and so were the disciples of Mount Hua. Even Chung Myung stood up in shock. 100 steps divine fist. What the hell is he? The eyes of Chung Myung looking at this novice monk were shining bright. I can't remember if it was explained before, but their names are a type of metal. I can assume that you all know why these metals were used, plus dragon, so essentially. 1. Gold dragon equals Jiam Ryong. 2. Silver dragon equals Yoon Ryong. 3. Bronze dragon equals Dong Ryong. Their father clearly had a killer naming sense, am I right? Chapter 282, Life is Inherently Unfair, 2. Oh my god. The sect leaders on the podium were all shocked. Wasn't it the divine fist? He didn't look that old, but he managed to do that. In terms of power, it looked quite strong too. Ha ha ha. Abbot, how did you manage to hide such a person? The abbot smiled at Hyo Dejinen's words. I didn't mean to deceive anyone by hiding this kid. He is the shy type and didn't want to show his skills till now, simply stated the abbot. Isn't it weird that you are making this fuss instead of me? Right, but... Hyo Dejinen looked at the novice monk in surprise. The guy who left the sparring circle had bowed to the crowd. Isn't he a Hei disciple? Yes, that is correct. He is the youngest of the Heja disciples. If he is a Hei disciple, doesn't that make him a first-class disciple? A first-class disciple. He is younger than the second-class disciples in age. Ah. The abbot smiled. Although the disciples' classes are quite tangled up, it was difficult not to let a child who barely passed the conditions to join the ranks of the first-class disciples not participate. If there is anything troubling you about this, I apologize. No. Any child who passed the terms for the competition is eligible to compete. That isn't a crime. Hyo Dejinen quickly stopped any complaints which might come. I need to watch that guy more. This competition wasn't over yet. It was important to win in this competition to spread the fame of oneself and their sect, but it was also important to identify the talents being nurtured by other sects. Would anyone miss the chance to observe such a monster because of such trivial matters? This is amazing. At his age, to be this good. We cannot help but admire it. Groans and exclamations flowed out. Yet this wasn't a fake response. What the young novice monk had shown was really something they all admired. 100 steps divine fist. A combat technique from Shaolin. If the Arahant fist was the basis of Shaolin, then this could be called the best and purified version of Shaolin's martial arts. It was said that it was a martial art that Shaolin was so proud of that they described it as being equal to the 72 ascending fine arts. Shaolin's martial arts were literally something that took time to learn, but in the end, they would turn out perfect. It was known that their monks took years of training to understand their complex and mysterious martial arts. But at this age, this child was already performing something amazing. And at this level. Hyo Dejinen's eyes narrowed. He thought that Shaolin had a hidden card, and it looked like they had hidden it for quite a long time. It became clear that they were holding this competition for the sake of highlighting this monster. Hee hee. It is amazing. Not at all, humbly said the abbot. To use such a technique in a preliminary spar, especially after he said he didn't want to use it, it is clear that he went for it because Mount Hua was a true opponent for him. Still, it cannot be ignored that he used it. The abbot smiled. With this attention, the focus on Mount Hua has been snatched away, but... He glanced around at the faces of the sect leaders, whose reactions were divided into two. Half of the faces were extremely disappointed, while the others seemed to be deeply thinking of something. The frustrated ones were the kind who didn't have the confidence to handle He Yun's one skills, and those who thought too deeply were trying to compare He Yun's talent with their own. And... oh. Only one person had a different expression. Mount Hua. Among the many sect leaders, only Hyunjong looked comfortable. Ads by Pub Future. Was it because he had let go of his obsession with winning and losing? I will know if I watch him. The abbot smiled and turned his head lightly as the conversations continued. What just happened? It was like a flash. There isn't a technique that can do that. Wasn't there a saying about one seeing how much they know too? Unlike the other disciples of Mount Hua, who paid attention to the result, Bak Chan and the others understood how terrifying this was. For Bak Sang not to get hurt, the force was reduced at the last minute. Bak Sang probably didn't get hurt because it was a blow that only pushed him back. And knowing the ridiculous amount of control it took to tamper with the power of a technique so as not to harm the opponent, they looked at this monk with serious expressions. The winner is Shaolin's He Yun. Cheers erupted for Shaolin. As expected of Shaolin, the disciple of Mount Hua was blown away with a single blow. Right. True. It was strange that only Mount Hua was active. Now the true power of the other sects is showing itself. Such a great thing. What is this? The audience didn't hide their excitement. More and more cheers, much more than the ones which had come for Mount Hua, rained down on He Yun. The man simply blushed as he walked away. Mount Hua's win streak was broken. Then how long did you think it would last? How can Mount Hua keep doing that? Luck, all luck. How could it be possible with only luck? Don't say nonsense. TCH. TCH. It sounds like you don't know. How can a prestigious sect not have power? Unlike Mount Hua, which attracts raw talent, the other sects differentiate talents with experience and classes. See. This is the real thing. Didn't he fall down? Right. Now, in the finals, we will only see the real talents of these prestigious sects. Ah. But there was something good in what Mount Hua showed. I believe in Mount Hua. The crowd began to make a fuss. But the ears of the Mount Hua disciples didn't hear it. Bak Chion's gaze was fixed on He Yun, who was walking away. What do you think? That he. It was a face that said that the world was ridiculous. What did I say about geniuses? Are you trying to say he is a real genius? No. That isn't at the level of what a true genius would do. Ah. Bak Chan looked at Chung Young with doubtful eyes. But seeing the serious expression, he chose to wait. And Chung Myung, who looked at the sparring circle, thought. That was insane. In the world, such things are born once in a while. Things that destroy everything that exists and create something new. That was what the world called an eminent monk of Shaolin. For example, the people such as Bodhidharma changed the flow of the previous martial arts in the land by creating Shaolin martial arts. And Sam Bong created Wudang's core concepts. Such people came to be called geniuses, and genius was a term that was only used to call someone whose talent would only appear twice or thrice in several generations. No, how can such a man fall into Shaolin? Damn the world. Still, the things we had were being overshadowed by talent. I want a bamboo spear to hit it all. From the perspective of Chung Myung, who started from the bottom without having anything, this monster of Shaolin was absurd. Crazy guy. Crazy. If he grew up like this, he wouldn't just be the best in Kango, but also leave his mark in the history books. Ads by Pub Future. So. I feel bad. Why? At Bak Chion's question, Chung Myung said. Unfortunately, he was born at the same time as me. If not, it would have been the same as stealing the title of best in the world. He is the same age as me. TCH. Same era as me. He will not be able to get out from under my shadow. I feel bad. But what do we do? Life is inherently unfair. You need to work hard and think you have no luck. If not, there is no other way. Just shut it. Bak Chon took a deep breath. But Sasok. Don't we have to get him? Get him. Sasok. Sasok. Why me? Chung Myung smiled. Not Dong Ryong but Bak Sang Sasok. You must have passed out from Ak. Bak Sang. Bak Chon then ran for Bak Sang, making Chung Myung sigh. There is no good left. Of course, this wasn't something Chung Myung should be saying. The 15 participants. The 14 of us among the 122 other participants have passed. Hyun Jong smiled. This event was amazing in the history of Mount Hua. For today, I will never be ashamed in front of our ancestors. If one more had won, everyone would have advanced. Bak Sang bowed his head, and Bak Chon shouted at Chung Myung. "Ya! Idiot! Is that something you say in front of people? I am sorry. You cannot beat him either. Did a hidden sense of defeat wake up from your heated heart? Why is Sasok saying things I never mumbled? Well, you said he was strong. Right." Chung Myung nodded his head. Bak Sang Sasok cannot win over him even if he fights him 100 times. So don't worry. It is just that you lack skills. It isn't that you were careless, and no matter how well you did, the results would have been the same. What is the problem, Sasok? Bak Sang, who was there, had his eyes rolled back, going crazy, and Chung Myung tilted his head. Are you hurt? You were rubbing it in, you bastard. You. Me. Just shut it. Please. N-O-Vel-B in.C, om. The two people continued to fight with each other, and the disciples of Mount Hua didn't seem that disappointed anymore. Wei Lishan, who saw this, smiled. Dogfight. A very shitty dogfight. The bigger problem was that Hyun Jong, who was sitting in the center, was looking at this very warmly, and so were the other elders. No, sect leader. What kind of job do you have? A zookeeper. How can you look at such animals with those eyes? Wei Lishan was shocked. Now. Be quiet. Hyun Jong calmed him down. The other disciples had to be calmed just as much as Chung Myung and Bak Chon. They said the finals would be in 2 days. I hope you use this time wis. Hyun Jong turned his anxious gaze to Chung Myung and blinked his eyes as the boy said, "What? Ugh." Hyun Jong took a deep breath. I cannot even say anything to him. Please, if only you had half the character of Bak Chon or Yoon Jong, I would never wish for anything else, but the heavens are fair. One person didn't get to have everything. Seriously. To feel pride and anger from the same person. Hyun Jong looked at Chung Myung and said, "Please. The next 2 days. The coming 2 days. We do not want to have any trouble, okay? This is bad, sect leader. When you say something like I created trouble." Hyun Jong grabbed his sword handle. You came with a sword? Chung Myung smiled. It must have been a while since you picked one up. Put it aside already. Ugh. Hyun Jong turned away from him and looked at the other disciples. Listen. Yes, sect leader. You have been good till now. He spoke with a calm smile now. It would be great if we could get good results in the finals, but from now on, it will not be as easy as before. Chung Myung tried to enter into the vision of Hyun Jong. And they are prestigious sects, right? He. Yes. Right. Hyun Jong smiled happily. Right. Don't be discouraged by this. Stand with your shoulders wide, show off your skills, and have no regrets. The results don't matter. What you get from this matters. Yes, sect leader. Hyun Jong smiled, looking at his lovely disciples. It was my mission to protect these children and Mount Hua. The seeds sown by Chung Myung would grow into beautiful trees in this competition, and one day, they would spread their branches over the world. So as a sect leader, he has to protect. Listen to it and keep these words in your heart. Shouted Chung Myung. Hyun Jong looked at him in shock as this was unlike him. That child looks a bit. You need to win to get it. Did you see what the loser gets? Do you see Bak Sang Sasuk over there? That is what happens when you lose. You. Bak Sang. Calm down. Bak Sang. TCH. Chung Young clicked his tongue, looking at Bak Sang, and tried to go after him. And he looked around. Win at all costs. Okay. Exclamation mark. Oh. Win. Break their heads too. Hyun Jong still smiled kindly, looking at his disciples cheering. Listen to my words at least, you bastards. It was already natural for Mount Hua to gain more power than before the competition. However, it would be Hyun Jong who thought that he should seriously consider whether that was a blessing to Kanggo or not. PRN, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to Shaolin's Ji-yun, this generation's Chung Young. Unfortunately for him, Chung Young still exists. Ed.N. A mixture between seeing is believing, and only seeing the things you are familiar with.